who here has ever worked on a machine like this? Raise your hand, please. How was the coding experience on that? Yeah, right, so not many coding, maybe some ASCII code, but that's about it. So this is one of those machines. That's where I learned how to type on all the way back in 2006. I think the volume is lowering up and down, maybe a little bit. Well, we'll see if it works. So in 2006, I learned at a typing course at school, and what we learned there was proper touch typing. Meaning you use all the fingers to type, you can find all the keys without looking at your keyboard, and if you're not moving your hands, basically they are in what's called the home row. There you have your fingers, and from there you reach all the other keys. And I'm proud to say, I was the fastest typist in the class. We were actually graded on accuracy, so it didn't matter, but it's what I cared about, so yeah. Now, fast forward to 10 years later, 2016, I'm still typing, but at this point I'm very much into competitive programming, which looks a little bit like this. So we were in a room, teams of people trying to solve exercises and algorithms, those kind of things, a bit like Masters of Java. Basically, we had to play on hardcore mode, so we were doing C++ in what's basically the Linux equivalent of Notepad, no AI, no autocompletion, all of that. And you can imagine like being able to type fast there helped me a little bit. But also there were a couple of things that struck me odd there. So there were other teams that brought their own keyboard. I didn't understand that because there were keyboards right there. And also we heard some other teams, they were trying to set up an IDE and trying to run Java on that, and we were laughing at them because we were doing the real deal, right? We were doing C++ in the code editor, so that's where it was at. But that was in 2016. Now, 3 years later, I switched careers from competitive programming into corporate programming, and I became a Java engineer, so maybe jokes on me. But basically what I was able to do was make from my hobby my work, and I continued there. So everything was looking right. But at that point, so I had basically been typing and working with computers for over half my life, and things were starting to catch up on me. So I was starting to notice pains in my fingers, hands, shoulders, neck even, everything. After a day of work, I couldn't really do anything else anymore. So I also have other hobbies like bouldering. Yeah, it involves your hand, that was not really an option. Video games, out of the question. Smartphones, okay, I couldn't live without those. But yeah, without jokes, even holding a tablet or e-reader was already very straining for me. And this all happened within the first year of me starting my professional career. And actually, I thought this was normal. Everybody was having this, like after a day of work, yeah, everything hurts. Turned out it was not. So I had some advice and I made some resolutions. And next year, 2020, everything was gonna be better. Yeah, I don't know if you remember much about 2020, but not everything was better probably that year. But if there's one thing that stuck with me was that nobody was coming within 1.5 meters of my keyboard. So that was the moment I said, okay, I don't care about being able to work on other man's machine anymore. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do what's comfortable for me, and we'll start with that. So now fast forward to 5 years later to today. This is what my, 2025. So this is what my setup looks like right now. As you can see, it looks completely different. And today I'll share you the story of how I started from a normal keyboard and I came all the way here. So. Welcome to Confessions of a Keyboard Addict. I will confess, I now do use an IDE. I also do bring my own keyboard to the office, and yeah, I'm very much addicted to optimizing all of that. And again, I'll share you what I did in the last 5 years to come here, but also I'll show you what you can do to make it personal for you, because there's basically 3 things that you need to start this kind of journey. You need KPI. So I'm not talking about key performance indicators. What I'm talking about is you need knowledge. That's what I will share you today. You want to make things personal. So whatever works for me might not work for you. So you want to think about that. And lastly, it's very important to iterate in small steps. Don't do everything at once because, yeah, that's too much. So keep those things in mind when you're looking at the story of what I did. Keep in mind that you need to make it personal and small steps. Now, starting with the basics. Every topic, I have a question for all of you, and it's a would you rather that question. So I had to make some tough choices when I started doing this kind of stuff, but now you also have to make tough choices. So, if I ask you, would you rather that A, all the keys on your keyboard are shuffled around, or B, you can only type with 2 fingers, what would you choose? Would you go for option A? And then we would rather go for option B? Okay, so we have a divide to do. I'll come back to this in a bit. But first, let me talk about what the problem was for me. So it actually starts all with that touch typing I mentioned at the beginning. So it's just very nice to be able to type without looking at my keyboard, but using all your fingers in that way might not be the most ergonomic way to type, especially if you look at this pinky over there on the right side. It has a lot of work to do. And if you compare that to your thumbs, both of them only have one button compared to like more than 10 for your pinky. And this was, for me, where the issue started. So having to stretch two buttons that were far out, but I used a lot, I got strains here in my fingers, my pinkies, and that was the first issue. So this is what I wanted to solve first. So I took 3 of the buttons, backspace, enter, and escape, and I thought, can I do better? And I have some suggestions there. So starting with the escape key, so it's all the way on the top left. What I did was, instead of putting it there, I moved it to a different key, namely the caps lock, and I made that my escape key. So caps lock is a key that you probably don't use that often, maybe if you're a SQL engineer, but yeah, most of the time you can get by with just using shift. So what if you just change that button to escape? It's very close to the home row, so you don't have to stretch. And this is actually something, especially if you're working on a Mac, you can go to your system settings. You couldn't do that right now. You can just go to your keyboard settings, go to modifier keys, and change whatever your caps lock button is doing. And there you have it for free, basically. Now, next one was the enter key. So this one is closer to the home row, but you still have to move over some keys, especially if you're on a European keyboard, because then the enter key is vertical, and there's more keys in between. And this one you probably also use more often than your escape key anyway. So I thought, what can I do better here? Can I put it somewhere else? And I did. I put it right there on the home row instead of the semicolon. So now my enter key was right at my fingertips. Only problem is, I am a Java engineer, so I do use a semicolon. So I had to put it somewhere else. And I could have done the switch around the other way, where I said, oh, semicolon is now the enter button. But it didn't feel nice, because then again, you have to stretch for it, and your enter button is that big button over there that you also want to be able to press really quickly. So I had another idea. What if I do something like this, where I take the period and the comma, and if I press them both at the same time together, then it becomes a semicolon. This is what's called a combo key. So pressing two things becomes something else. And in this case, it also makes sense to me, because I thought that, well, a semicolon is a period and a comma anyway. So doing those at the same time, well, that now is the semicolon. And to do something like this kind of remapping, you need to do something more than just in your system settings. So for this, you have to install an application. This is an example how you do that on Windows. There's this application called AutoHotkey. There you can do these kinds of remapping. So in this case, your semicolon becomes an enter key, and similarly, the combination of period and comma now becomes semicolon, and then there you have it. Now, last one, backspace. This was the big one. So, like I mentioned, I'm not the most accurate typist, so maybe it's just me. But then when it's very far, I use it quite often. So I moved that all the way over there, next to the space bar. So that now is my backspace key. And this also kind of makes sense to me, because, well, I want to go to the left, I want to go forward, I use spacebar, and I want to go back, I use the backspace key, and I can even use my thumb for that, so that's quite useful. Only problem is, command is also something I use a lot, because that's, if you're working on Mac, or if you work on Windows, on Mac, that's the main shortcut key for copy, paste, all those kind of things. So you don't want to lose that feature. So what you can do there, you can do something like this, where one button has two different behaviors depending on how you use it. This is what's called a hold tap. So basically, if you tap it, it's your backspace key, and if you hold it down, it becomes command. And then you can use it in combination with other keys, which also makes sense, because normally you don't tap your command key, you only hold it down in combination with other things. So hold tap is also an option here. You have to configure this. This time I'll show an example on Mac. There's an application called Carabiner Elements. You can install it, and you can do these kinds of config, and then you remap. Specifically, this part over there, that is where you say, oh, if I only tap it without any other keys, then it's my normal thing, backspace, and if you otherwise use it, then it's the command. So from what started out with buttons all the way far away, I moved them closer to the home row, and now it's more comfortable to use. So these are the kind of like the first steps I did to make it a little bit more comfortable. And looking back at the question at the start, obviously I went for option A. I'm shuffling around the keys on my keyboard. This is only the beginning, but we'll come back to that. But again, if you are actually typing with less fingers and all your things, you might not even have these kind of issues. So there's also something to say for that, because then, yeah, if you don't have any problems with this, then don't do it. But yeah, whatever works for you. All right. Next topic: shortcuts. Again, I have a question. This time, you have to choose between A, you are forced to use keyboard shortcuts, or B, you have your enter key on your mouse, which is sort of the anti-shortcut, because at the end of every line you have to move to your mouse, press the enter, and then go back. So who would want option A in this case? Lots of people, yeah? Anyone option B? Oh yeah, okay, couple, yeah, sure. I'll tell my preference at the end of this section, but for now, let's assume that the goal is to only use keyboard. If you want to be able to work with your keyboard only and no mouse, what do you need? Well, in my opinion, you need three things. You need to be able, A, to manipulate text, so that's typing text, but also selecting stuff, copy, paste, those kind of things. You need to learn application shortcuts. There's not really a way around that, because, well, you need to interact with the applications. And you need to be able to switch between different applications. And I think if you can do these three with just your keyboard, you're probably 80% of the way there. So let's look at each of these in a bit more detail. So modifying text, like I mentioned, obviously you need to be able to type, but that's what you use keyboard for anyway. But also if you want to quickly select words or go to the beginning of words, you can do that with arrow keys, or modifier with arrow keys to go to the beginning of a word, or another modifier goes to the beginning of a sentence. And you can use shift together with that to select multiple things, and you can also go up and down, those kind of things. So this is something that I use a lot, and it works in any application where you have text. So if you can do that in one application, you can do it everywhere. Now, application shortcuts, on the other hand, those are very specific to specific applications. And the applications you use a lot, it makes sense to learn a lot of those shortcuts, but sometimes you use an application not that often, and then you forget those. So I do have a recommendation here. If there's only one shortcut you learn one that gives you access to all the other shortcuts. So, for example, in IntelliJ IDEA, you can do Command-Shift-A on Mac, or I think Control-Shift-A on Windows, and then you can just search for all the other shortcuts, and it will tell you what the shortcut is, so maybe next time you know. And similarly on VS Code, it's Command-Shift-P, and if you're an Obsidian user, it's Command-P, then you can just search for all the shortcuts there. And finally, there's application switching. This is switching between applications with just your keyboard. One thing that came to mind very early was the Alt-Tab combination. If you're working on Windows or Linux, you probably know this one. I think on Mac it's Command-Tab instead. So this one lets you switch between your most recently used applications. But it's never really stuck with me, because you have to press it multiple times depending on how recently you used a certain application. I just want to go to that application I want to go to right now. So what I always used was this one instead. So that's the Windows button with a number, and pressing that number opens the numbered application on your taskbar, and you can pin those in specific positions so that they are always the same. And this is what I always did on Windows and also Linux. Certain numbers to me mean certain applications. So I always have my file browser, not in this picture, but file browser is always 4, web browser is always 1, those kind of things. So this was really ingrained into me, and then I had to switch to Mac. And there this is no longer an option, they don't have this in the system. So I had to come up with a different way. It took me some time to find a good solution. I wrote a whole blog post about it, so if you're interested, you can read more about it there. But in short, what you need is a fourth secret ingredient. You need custom global shortcuts. So what you want to be able to do is create your own shortcuts without interfering with anything of any application. And there's a really easy way to do that. What you do is you create a shortcut using all the modifiers on your keyboard. So what you do, that's called hyper. That's a combination of all 4 modifiers. So that's Command, Shift, Option, Control in Mac, or Control, Shift, Alt, Windows button on Windows. You hold all those 4 down, and then any other letter, number, whatever, is a shortcut that you can be pretty sure of that no other application uses, because it's very inconvenient and uncomfortable. But it is custom, so it doesn't conflict. So that's the first step. No non-conflicting shortcuts. And then, instead of doing that with one hand, all those modifiers, what I recommend is using one of those Alt-Tab things. So, for example, you can do it on the spacebar. You can make it into a whole tab, that if you tap it, it's just a regular spacebar, like normal. But if you hold it down, then it becomes the hyper key with all the 4 modifiers in one key. And there's 2 reasons why I recommend spacebar for that. So first, you can use it with either thumb. So you can do shortcuts with one hand on any letter, number, whatever, any key. And the other one, because this is the hyper modifier, your spacebar basically becomes the hyper spacebar, which just sounds awesome, so obviously that's the real reason. So yeah, looking back, I actually, I have to admit, I don't like either of these options. I had this for a while in IntelliJ where I was forced to use shortcuts and I hated it. But on the other hand, enter key on mouse, yeah, I also like to use my mouse a lot. So when I'm using my mouse, I don't like to go back to my keyboard just for one key and then back to my mouse. So there's also a reason to think about doing things on your mouse with more shortcuts, but that's for a different day. Moving on to the next one. So, keyboards. This is the big topic. So this is where I get most questions or remarks about, like, people have really opinions about their keyboard. So let's test the audience here. I have a question. Would you rather have a keyboard with A, too few keys, okay, or B, too many keys? So who would go for option A here? Too few keys, okay. And option B with too many keys? Interesting. Lots of people say option A. Probably most of them are vibe coding these days and don't need their keys anymore. But yeah, there's an option here to choose from. And I'll come back to this. But first, let's look at a brief history of keyboards over the years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare keyboards to phones and look at how they look like. So today, phones look something like this, where it's a smartphone. And the keyboard looks something like this with all the buttons and so forth. So this is today. If you go back 25 years to the year 2000, this is what a phone looked like. And here is a picture of a keyboard from that time. So as you can see, the keyboard has been used a bit over the years, but basically it's still the same as the other picture. It has all the keys, it's a bit chunkier. Yeah, it's 25 years old, but still pretty similar. Now, if we can go back further to the year 1960, this is what phone. And the state-of-the-art computer used this keyboard. So keyboard still looks pretty similar. It lost some keys over there, but more or less still the same. It uses QWERTY. I bet we can work with this if we had to. I don't want to work with the phone. I probably could, but keyboard looks fine, right? But if we go back even further, year 1878. By that time, the phone had just been invented. This is a picture of it, first phone. I wouldn't be able to tell you how this worked or what part is what, but I can work with this keyboard, no problem, from the same year. So this is actually the Remington 2 typewriter. It has a QWERTY layout, it has all the buttons. Yeah, it's not a computer, but it's a keyboard. As you can see, over these years, over the last 150 years, basically, phones have changed a lot, while keyboards mostly stayed the same. It is a bit of an unfair comparison because, well, phones have a lot of technology in them, and that changed a lot. And keyboards, yeah, the real technology is in the thing that you interact with. So it's the computer, and the keyboard's only the way you interact with it. But what I think is interesting here is that phones, every time the technology changed, also the way you interact with it. So whenever the phones with buttons came out, yeah, the rotary dial was basically deprecated, right? Nobody's saying now, oh yeah, I want that rotary dial back. With keyboards, yeah, okay, nothing really changed that much. There are only more keys now. So is that good, bad? Well, we'll see. Because looking at this keyboard, this specifically is a mechanical keyboard. It's a Keychron one, but you can check if it's a mechanical keyboard. You have lots of options, and you can customize whatever you want. So this is a big one. You can go for smaller ones, more like a laptop size. You can also choose your own colors, keycaps, there's lighting for keyboards, and you can even choose how it feels, how it sounds, those kind of things. And I really recommend trying these kinds of things out, because for me, this is already a much needed boost in compatibility, because laptop keyboards for me are very, very annoying. But this you can choose, but in the end, it still will look something like this. So if you don't have a mechanical keyboard, I would recommend trying it out. They can be, don't go for the clicky ones. if you intend to take these to the office because your colleagues won't like you, but apart from that, it's a good recommendation. But did you know that you can also do other things like this? You can do this with your keyboard. Well, probably not with your keyboard, but you can buy keyboards that can do this. And there are some reasons why you might want to do that. So this is a picture from Kinesis. They sell ergonomic keyboards, but there's some truth to it. Like in a regular keyboard, you have to basically bend your arms like this, and that's training muscles over here. And in a split keyboard, you can choose the position and the angle however you like it best. And a second reason is that a normal keyboard is basically flat, but a split keyboard you can tilt like this, tilt it open. This is also something that you can try yourself. Like normally, when you lift your arms, you do it like this vertically. And if you have to rotate them like this, you're also straining muscles over there. And for me, even thinking about having to type like this, I really noticed that my shoulder stands up. And if I couldn't do like this, everything relaxes. So there's reasons why you might want to do this. It is more work to get into this because it feels different. But if you have some injuries, it might be worth to take a look into. But there's more. There's one more comparison I want to make with the old keyboard and the new one. And that has to do with how the keys are positioned on the keyboard, basically the outlining of that. So as you can see, the keys don't go straight vertical, they have like this staggering effect. And in the old days they had to do this on typewriters because the hammers couldn't be on the same line, they had to be spaced out. But there's not really a reason in modern keyboards why you would still need that, except that people are used to it. So there are keyboards out there that actually do align these straight vertical, and then you can just move your fingers like this instead of having to do diagonal like that or that. So also something to take into account. So this keyboard specifically, it looks very similar to what I have. To my personal preference, it still had too many keys, so I went for a smaller one. This is basically the keyboard that I have. This is a Ferris sweep. It only has 34 keys. I can still work on it. And the nice thing about this one is fully open source. You can go to the GitHub link. You will get these PCB files. You can send that to a manufacturer. They will send this to you. You have to do some soldering yourself. The switches in there. You can choose nice keycaps, and then you have your own keyboard. So I did this. It was a nice hobby project. And also a nice thing about open source things is that other people they contribute and they make nice accessories. So somebody else made a 3D printed carrying case for the keyboard, and myself, I made that thing out of Legos. So it's cool stuff. So looking back at the question, I prefer smaller keyboards. I also know people that have bigger hands. They say, oh yeah, I really like one with more keys because I can reach them and I don't want to do all those hard stuff. But I hope I also convince you that there's more than size. There's lots of things that you can choose from. And specifically looking back at the three things I mentioned at the beginning, so knowledge you now have, like what are the options. Personal, you really need to take this into account that it's all about preference. And then after that, you iterate, like me, you go for all the keyboards that you can find, you try them out, and then you keep them in your collection. So this is a picture of my desk at home. I might have mentioned that I'm an addict, but obviously this might go a bit far, but whatever you want to do, you can do it. Alright, so there's one more topic. This is the rabbit hole, so now we're going into the advanced stuff. And again, I have a question for you guys. So would you rather have no mouse buttons? You can still move your mouse, you just can't click any buttons. Or no arrow buttons on your keyboard. If you had to choose, who would go for option A in this case? And option B? Yes, we're more like 50-50 on this one. So I'll come back to this. But first, I already mentioned this is what my keyboard looks like. And you might be wondering, where are the other keys? So this is only letters, but if you want to do coding and programming, you also need symbols, numbers, arrows, modifiers, those kind of things. Yeah, you can't really do that without. And the easiest way to answer that is to show you a picture, basically this picture. If you think about your phone, it already has a very small keyboard, but you can change what those keys are by just clicking on the buttons over there. And you can apply the same principle for a regular keyboard. You can just change the keys based on certain configurations. So to give you an example, this is a digital version of my keyboard. And I have these extra thumb buttons, so I have more options there. If I hold down the one on the left with one of my thumbs, all the keys change, and they basically become this. So I have my modifier keys, and I have my arrow keys. So I can still have access to all my shortcuts. And this is what I use a lot to modify text, like I mentioned, like, oh, I want to go back a couple words. Well, I just hold down that button, use my arrows and modifiers, and then quickly there, and it's right there at my fingertips. If you want to try this out, this is something I recommend. Just go for something simple, just arrow keys, modifiers. Start with that, and I'll tell you how to do that. So there's two ways. So first option is you can buy or already have a programmable keyboard, and then you can do these kind of configurations on the keyboard itself. If you just want to try it out and you don't have one of those, you can also use software packages to do that. So there's two options, Kmonad and Kanatab. Both of them are open source cross-platform applications that let you do these kind of configurations. And to give you an example, this is Kmonad. So you start out by defining what your current keyboard looks like. And if you want to create a new layer on top of that, you have the same structure, but you only define the keys that you want altered. And then you also configure a way to change between those. So holding down the button, just clicking a button, switching between layers. One difference though with a phone is on the phone you can see what the keys are if you change them. On the keyboard, probably the one you have at home doesn't do that. So you have to remember. So that's why I say start with something simple that you can remember and iterate on that. Next. Well, I had this application open, so if I needed it, I could always open the application to see what was what. But also, like I said, for me what worked was just choosing something that makes sense to me. So I just basically went, oh, what is for me a logical way of arranging the modifiers? And that was really easy for me to remember. Also the arrow keys, I didn't like this because, well, you can also do like the inverted T shape, like your regular arrows, so put the up arrow a little bit up and the down arrow straight beneath that, and then yeah, it's just a different position, but it's still the same keys. So yeah, do something that makes sense, and then you can most of the time easier remember it. Another question? Yeah, funny that you ask. Yeah. So how do you do shortcuts with this? Okay, so I hoped that was gonna come after the session, but yeah. I'll answer it now. So there's two ways. So the question is, how do you combine these modifiers with like the letters for your shortcut? That's a very good question. So there's two ways. Let me go back to this picture a little bit easier. So there's two ways, like I said. So the first one is to not make these regular modifiers, but sticky modifiers. So you go to this layer, click the command key, for example, then the keyboard will remember, oh, I clicked the command key, then you release it, then you go back to this layer, and then you say, oh, I click now on the button, and then it remembers I have to combine these. So that's how you can do it. You go here, command, release, and then C for copy, whatever. That's a bit, yeah, convoluted though. The real answer, what I use, I didn't want to show it in the picture, but I use those hold tab things on my regular layers as well. So my ASDF are basically those hold tabs where if I press down a key, it's just a letter. If I hold down the key, it's the modifier. And then I can straight up use it. I use it on both sides, actually. So I have on the right side and the left side, I have modifiers and the keys. But very good question, yeah. So like I said, so I started with this, and then in small steps I iterated. So I also added things like my copy-paste key shortcuts here already. So that I don't even have to do the other one. And then I added some home keys over there, and I even added my mouse buttons also on my keyboard, just so that I can use my mouse with one hand and click the buttons with the other, so I can distribute the load a little bit, which for me makes it more cool. So this is one layer. I did more, so on the other side I added a numpad for all the numbers. Again, I went for something that made sense to me. So actually, on a regular keyboard, I never learned how to do numbers without looking at my keyboard. I always have to look at my keyboard, like where are the numbers again? But with this I can do it, because a numpad I could do that with, and now they are just right where my head already is. I can just use the button, and on the other side I have the remaining symbols. So, well, you get the idea. It is some work to remember all of that, but again, take it easy, take it slow, do it at your own pace. So looking back at that question, I actually went for both options. So together we did it, but yeah, you might, of course, I still have buttons on my mouse. I didn't remove them or anything, but I use buttons on my keyboard as well for that. And I still have arrow keys, it's just not in the place where I usually are. So there's one more thing that you can, which I did. And that has to do with the layout of the letters here. This is a QWERTY layout, and when I started using computers, that was before I learned how to type, I always was like, why are the letters like this? Why doesn't it just go A, B, C, D? I cannot find anything here. And there's a story about that. So back in the times, like 150 years ago, they used to have typewriters, and they used to go alphabetical at first. But what I found out was that when people were typing very rapidly, all the hammers got intertwined, and that was an issue. So the story is that they designed this layout, QWERTY layout, to slow people down, so that wouldn't happen anymore. Well, it's a funny story. I don't think it's actually true, and one of the reasons is that if you actually look at an alphabetical layout, and you make a heat map out of that, so now the reddest keys are the ones that are used the most, you can see that it's just all over the place. So I don't think people were really like typing very fast on this one, especially if you compare it to QWERTY. I also have a heat map of that. Actually, QWERTY has more structure to alphabetical than, it has more structure. So I'd say typing on this would be better. Funnily enough though, most of the frequently used keys are on the top row, which is not the home row. But yeah, 160 years ago, I think they had some other design choices there. But you could change this. There's no reason why you would keep to QWERTY, or there are other options, of course, like AZERTY and QWERTZ. They're basically the same. But you can also change them completely to something else, like this is the fallback. What they did here was use all the keys that you use the most, they put them on the home row, right where your fingertips are, and then you don't have to move that much. And for these, there are many options. Again, it comes down to preference, but yeah, there's also Colnac. And what I use is a variant of this one, this is Gallium, but the same principle holds. So the most used keys are at the home row. And I have to say, this is very comfortable to type with. It has all these nice benefits. So, like I said, the keys are right there. You don't have to move that much, your fingers. You also balance the load between, and you avoid repeatedly using the same finger. So yeah, again, it is for comfort. However, yeah, it's not all bright. There are some cons. So the first thing is it's quite hard to learn. You basically have to relearn how to type completely from scratch. So you have to commit to that. Also, it's not faster than QWERTY. The fastest typers on the planet all use QWERTY. So if you just want to increase your speed, don't go for one of these just for speed. It's made for comfort, not for that. Also, there is a high risk of not being able to type on QWERTY keyboards anymore. I have that problem, so I cannot use anybody else's keyboard. But I also can't use mine, so yeah, fair's fair, right? You also have to really learn all your shortcuts probably, or do remappings like I did. It kind of only makes sense if you are using all your fingers anyway, because if you don't, then yeah, they optimized for that, for like distribute amongst fingers. But if you already use 2 or more fingers, then yeah, different problems. So that's one. And lastly, when I say most used keys, that's only for the English language. So there's some optimization going on there, like, oh, in English the letter E is the most used. In other languages might be different. So if you also type in like Dutch or German or whatever, you have to take that into account. So it might not even be better, like using a different layout. But if, despite all of this, you still want to try it out, I do have 2 recommendations. So first one, you can go to this website called Keyboard Layout Tryout. And what you can do there is say whatever your current layout is, most of the time that's just QWERTY, and then you can say, oh, what is the layout you want to try out? In this case, that's Colnac. And what it will then present to you is a list of words that you can type. So on the bottom it says you what words the words are that you are typing. And on top row it says which keys you have to press. So you can see lots of F, J's and semicolons, because those are the keys that are on the home row of QWERTY. So you can get a feel of what it would feel like to type in a different layout. And then you can see, oh, maybe I like it. So that's the first. Second recommendation, if you really decide to do the switch, just make sure you can type your password, because otherwise you get locked out. Yeah, that's not good. But I wanted to show you a video of what it would look like if you combined all of this. So I started out with just QWERTY, and again, I can't use QWERTY anymore, so what I'm now doing is using less fingers and actually looking at the keyboard to find the keys, and I'm typing the text that's in the top. I'm pretty slow at that. But then I compare that now to when I do use proper touch typing, so I can find all the keys and use all my fingers. Now I'm using that keyboard layer tryout the other way around so that I can type QWERTY. And you can see my speed increases and my finger travel reduces. And then we compare that to the gallium layout, so the optimized layer that I use. So here you can see my fingers move even less. My speed increases. I still have to stretch to some buttons. That mostly has to do with the shift keys if I have to type uppercase letters. But now if you compare that to my fully customized keyboard that I made myself, there I have those homegrown modifiers. Everything is there. I barely have to move my fingers and I can still type. And actually I'm not only typing here, I'm fully programming. This is me using shortcuts, tab completion, symbols, all of that right from the fingertips. So this is what it could look like at the end if you want to go for it, but yeah, it does take some work. So what's next? I talked a lot. Let me first get a sip of drink. So I showed you a lot of things. But I thought it would be fun if I go over them again and rank them on what I recommend and what I do not recommend. Let's go here. I have this tier list. So I talked about being able to touch type and type without looking at your keyboard. That is something I have kind of like a love-hate relationship with. Like I mentioned, it allows you to go fast and efficient, but for me it was also probably where my strain came from in the first place. I would still really recommend it, but just think about if you feel any strains, take action on that. We also looked at remapping keys and do those kind of basic things. I would say try that out if you want. So you can use what I said, auto hotkey, carabiner, those kind of things. Try them out, might be for you. Then we have the quick application switching. This is one of those shortcuts. Those I really recommend because if you are in the zone, you don't want to move through your mouse, you can just do this. And especially if you're on Windows, this is right there, you can use it, you don't have to do anything for that, so use it right away. Different layers, that was one of the more advanced topics. Again, you can do that on any keyboard, so I do recommend try it out if you want to. All the things you can do with auto hotkey and carabiner, you can also do in the more advanced software packages. It's just a little bit more work to set up, but it is very nice. Or if you have a programmable keyboard, you can do that on your keyboard and you can bring it to any laptop or any computer that you work on. We also talked about mechanical keyboards. Yeah, to me that is really I really recommend that. Like, if you've never tried one and you know somebody that has one, just try it out. See if you feel if you like it. Yes, that's one of the bigger things you can do. Then we have the hyperspace thing. Obviously, S tier right there. Yeah. So not only the name is funny, but it's like being able to create custom shortcuts, not only for activating application, but also like window management and moving things to different screens. It's really powerful. So if you have that right on the spacebar, you can use it anywhere. Then we have this fully ergonomic keyboard. This is the one I made myself. It is also very comfortable, but this is one, again, this is one where all the keys are also differently spaced out and those kind of things. It's more work to get into it. It might be for you, it might not be, so yeah, a little bit less recommended than any regular, mechanical keyboard. And then finally we have the different layout. Yeah, I cannot really recommend. So yeah, it is very comfortable, but again, it takes months and a lot of commitment to go in there. Your productivity will basically go down if you do this. So take that into account. So those were all oh wait, I didn't show you, but like you can see the shortcuts here, right? Like when I type, you can see these are the application switching shortcuts. So the three important things that I told you were take the knowledge into account that I shared here. Make it personal to you. Doesn't make sense if you just copy whatever I did. Just think about how you would do it. And do it in small steps, because otherwise you will get overwhelmed. You will forget everything, and then your productivity will go to zero. So take small steps. And for me, looking back at this whole journey, I started out as someone who was like, why would you ever bring your own keyboard to the person in the office with the weirdest keyboard? These guys know, they see my keyboard there. So it's all still based on preference, but what I would really like you to do is think about your keyboard usage. Don't just use whatever's cheap available already on your laptop. Just have a think about it, like, hey, is there something I would like to? Because in the end, you will spend thousands of hours with your keyboard. So it's really important to make every keystroke count. Thank you. Sure. I have a summary of the slides right here and the slides itself, and we have some time for questions as well. So, are there any questions? Yes. Okay, so the question is, how much time did it take to go from a regular keyboard to what I currently have? Yeah. If I would have done the steps all like right after each other, probably I would say half a year. I spaced it out over multiple years because I started out with actually like a Microsoft more ergonomic keyboard. Used that for some time. I already used layers on that because I had the software. Then after that I switched to a more ergonomic keyboard, mechanical, those kind of things. And then I went to a travel size one, that's the one I made myself. Took some years, but in the end, if you really want to do it, especially if you want to change the layout, yeah, that takes some time. So that's how long it took me. But yeah, do whatever you like. Any other questions? Ah, yes? So fin motion is like to, is that to move your mouse with keyboard buttons? Right. Yeah, so just use your keyboard for coding and not the mouse. So there is a thing about Vim. I have looked into it. One of the reasons I didn't like it is because it's very much bound to certain letters, and I use a different layout. So that was one of the issues I had. So for me, it made more sense to put arrow keys on my keyboard, which I can use everywhere, not only in my code editor, but also in my browser if I'm typing. I use the same shortcuts to basically quickly type. But it's something I considered. I also do use it in Chrome, the Chrome Vimium plugin. So if I want to use my keyboard only for that, I can do it. But also, I must admit, half of the time I'm in mouse mode and I'm just using my mouse and just keyboard with my left hand. So yeah, there's that as well. Yes. Oh yeah, I never mentioned that, but yes, so good question. So did it fix my injuries? I wouldn't say it fixed my injuries, but now I am able to work without feeling them all the time. If I work for hours on end, even with the comfortable keyboard, it still wears me down. But mentioning that, when you're coding, you're not coding for hours on end anyways. It's only when I type articles or anything that I notice it now. So yes, it really helped me. But there are other things that you could also consider, like having a proper desk, chair lined out, those kind of things. Don't just do keyboard because it's fun. There's more things to consider. Also move around a bit, those things. Yeah, I try to do it more. So it's not really fixed, but it's still there, but it's definitely reduced. Yeah. Can you remap the function key? So you mean the function key on? Yes. Probably. I haven't tried that. But I think so. Yeah, I don't see a reason why you couldn't. But yeah, so that's for the function and like the symbols over there. You can change them around. I know that for sure. So that your F keys are regular F keys, and then you have to use the function key for the other things. You can probably also use it with Kmode or Canada. Any other questions? In that case, oh, we have one. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yes, so indeed. So these are the modifiers that I mentioned that I use, where my normal letters are hold tabs, where they become modifiers if you hold them down. Yes, carabiner is not nice for those. I tried it as well to use it on my Mac regular keyboard, and I had the same issue where they were doing the modifier when I really wanted the button, or the other way around. I have had more success with Kanata, so that's the one you can try out. But yeah, with that, I would say thank you very much again, and if you have any other questions, just come here. I'll be here around. So yes.